Welcome back to the Extraordinary Podcast. I'm your host, Keanu Trujillo, founder of Alchemy Co-working, and alchemy is the process of taking the ordinary and turning it into something extraordinary. First things first, allow me to explain. If you're watching this episode now or at a later date, you're going to notice a significant gap in time from late September, early October to now, and I can explain. Late September, Hurricane Helene devastated much of southeast United States, specifically Western North Carolina. I live in North Carolina. I've made my home in North Carolina since moving here in 2018, and I've really grown to love this community, the people, and this beautiful state. See, I come from northern New Mexico where the mountains are home. So what I loved about being here outside of Charlotte in the Charlotte area was being so close to the mountains, a couple of hours away. It's a quick day trip to go and get to experience the mountains. That always made me feel like I had a piece of home here with me. And when Hurricane Helene happened, I was being contacted from all these different angles and people asking, do you know of what people are doing to help? What are you doing to help? Hey, let's do something to help. And I started to see all those connections kind of coming together of people that were looking for something to do and a way to help, and also those that were going to make it happen either way. And the reason why those contacts were coming to me was because I have spent the last 4 years since 2020 and starting my first business here in the community, simply serving the community, being a connector, connecting, truly serving and connecting with people without needing anything. I had built my first coaching company in 2020 in COVID on Zoom, and most of my network was back west. So when the dust cleared after COVID, I didn't really need to sell anything here in my community. I just wanted to be able to serve. I just wanted to be able to plug in. So I had joined the board of a local chamber of commerce and just was a connector. I just wanted to serve. And so with that, I can attribute that connection and being able to connect in that way to why Alchemy Co-working was such an early success, because I wasn't selling anything. I was just genuinely looking to serve. So with that, I had built a vast network here in Gaston County and in the Charlotte area of people, and understanding that I'm a person of drive and action and wanting to serve. That's why I was getting all of these calls. And this was immediate. This was as soon as Friday night, Saturday morning, people reaching out. And if you're familiar, the storm really devastated our area that Friday. So with that, I had someone reaching out saying, what can we do to help? And another person, dear friend of mine named Miranda Wood, who said, hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to be a part of it? And that wasn't a, should we do something? That was a, I know she's going to do something. She's a leader and a person that I admire, respect, and trust. And I thought, okay, if she's doing it, then I want to be a part. At the same time, I had people reaching out from other networks saying, hey, I want to be involved. Specifically, a great friend of mine named Matt Fuchs, who is a CPA by trade, but is a master or jack of all trades. And he can do a lot of things, actually had experience in the nonprofit world. And so we got together, and by Sunday we were collecting supplies, and Miranda started to post with some of her business connections in the Charlotte and Gaston County area. And we thought, hey, let's get a couple of trucks up there. Let's send some supplies. Let's help to be a bridge to the long-term support from, the Red Cross, FEMA, Samaritan's Purse, all of these other places as they get established. We did see that Samaritan's Purse was immediately established in Boone, North Carolina, which was awesome. So we started to collect supplies, and what we thought would be a couple of trucks and a couple of individuals delivering supplies turned into dozens of trucks and pallets of supplies and water. And before we knew it, within a couple of days, this was much bigger than we had anticipated, and we were able to move quickly. Thanks to Miranda, the company that she works for, Complete Kids, who is a great friend, a former client of mine. They had space at a school here in the area that we were able to use to stage and send supplies. Now, I have a background in disaster relief. I had spent 8 years with the Army National Guard, and a big part of our responsibility is disaster relief. So I understood enough of the logistics. I also understood that one thing that typically causes issues in disaster are well-intended civilians that can get in the way. They have good intentions, but they can get in the way. So what we did was take a very methodical, intentional, and strategic approach to sending supplies, while also not creating further issues for those that were trying to respond, like the National Guard and local authorities. And this thing just blew up. Before we knew it, We had points of contact in Avery County, in Buncombe County, where Asheville is, one of the more famous or popular areas that many people all around the country know because of its beauty and because of the area that it is. But we had contacts all over Western North Carolina that we were able to connect with and supply and ask them what they needed. We had a bench of truck drivers and a fleet of trailers that we were sending out. And again, it just blew up. Where we found ourselves was, okay, we have this great supply operation, but what next? And what we found in the first couple of weeks, after the basic supplies and needs were met, a lot of our partners out there were being overwhelmed with supply, and they needed to get back to rebuilding. They needed to get back to cleaning up their homes and their properties and still searching for people. So we asked, well, what can we do now? And the overwhelming response was, can you stage supplies? Can you help to stage these supplies that are coming in? Because they understood that eventually the world would move on. And they didn't want to say no to these supplies because they would still have a long-term need. Although in a short amount of time, there would be the next disaster, unfortunately, that these other organizations would have to move on to. So we, through great connections here in Gaston County, thank you to National Mills and the Toll family, gave them a call and said, hey, we need some warehousing space. Do you have anything available? And they have been a great partner. They offered a 55,000 square foot warehouse here in our county to be able to stage and reorganize and send supplies, but also stage supplies for the future. And that was really that next step for this operation. And what we realized was this could actually be a nonprofit. This should be an ongoing mission. So I reached out to a couple of great mentors and friends of mine, Sharon Paget, who's the CEO of the county YMCA's multiple locations here in Gaston County, as well as a great friend and someone I look up to, Susanna Kavanaugh, who has started an amazing nonprofit for foster children. And she's just, these are giants in the not only nonprofit space, but leadership in our county. And I asked them, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that this should become a mission. And they challenged me to dream even bigger. What could it become to be that person that is the connector, that nonprofit that is the connector for not only disasters, but also needs in North Carolina? And so Conduit Carolinas was born. And that name is very intentional, given that we were always the connector. We had people calling from nearby states, Virginia, and even further saying, hey, what can we do to help? And we had the connections on the ground to be able to send them. We had great partnerships from large organizations like World Vision, who called and said, what can we do to help? And we had specific needs that they can meet, and they can meet immediately because we were the connection, the conduit, being the connection of those that want to help to those that need the help. And with that, thanks to our friend, Jack of all trades, Matt Fuchs, he helped us to establish a nonprofit, a true 501c3. And the bridge to that was another partnership in the Point Church here in Belmont and Pastor Ray Hardy and their team to be our fiscal sponsor to get that nonprofit status and to be that bridge so we can continue to bring impact, as well as through their church raising almost $30,000 very quickly to be able to aid this mission. So this started to really grow beyond what we thought it would be those first couple of days, with a couple of trucks, a couple of trailers, and some supplies to a fully established nonprofit. So that is where I've been. That's why this big gap. And I'm sharing that with you. One, ordinary to extraordinary, right? The content, the purpose of this podcast is you notice these connections, being able to call someone and say, hey, we need a space, and getting a 55,000 square foot warehouse, being able to call a local pastor and say, hey, we need a fiscal sponsor, can you take us on? And even being able to connect the team that really was the nucleus of this operation, Miranda, Matt, myself, as well as great operating partners in a woman named Rebecca Powell and a man named Jason Griffin, who really stepped in to man this operation pretty much from the beginning. I remember Rebecca came to our supply drop one day and she saw the mess that we had. We thought it was pretty well organized. And Miranda and myself, we're great starters, but managers and organizers, that is definitely a weak point. And she said, hey, do you need help in there? And I said, well, we would love to have some help. She said, okay, I'll be back this afternoon. She left, came back, and she's never left since. She's been such a crucial part of the team. And then we brought in Jason Griffin, who works for the Texas Rangers, but of course it was the off season, and he was looking to get involved here locally while he was in his off season. So he jumped in as well as we made our transition into the large warehouse to continue to stage. So we really had a strong team, and all of this came through connections. And there's others that I'm not mentioning now. Sammy's, John Bailey, owner of Sammy's, he being nearby our original drop point in downtown Belmont, provided lunch for our volunteers, and great friends of mine, John Church and Jennifer Church, provided any needs as they should arise, such as hand trucks, or dollies as we call them in the Southwest, that so many people just jumped in and said, hey, I want to help. And so many other organizations and companies in the community who, if I'm forgetting you, I apologize. I'm not forgetting you. I really appreciate everyone that jumped in, and several volunteers, thousands of hours that have been given since this devastating hurricane. So that's where I had been, and I wanted to share that again because it was about serving and connecting. And had I not built that network over the last 4 years, starting my business in 2020, wouldn't have been able to reach back and tap this network and call and make those asks to be able to spring into action as quickly and as relentlessly as we did. I mean, it was a really aggressive approach. I mean, I lived in gym shorts and a t-shirt for about a month there as we were manning this loading dock and sending these supplies out to Western North Carolina. And the other part is to share that with you. We now have this established nonprofit, Conduit Carolinas, and I'm going to have information in the notes here, whether it be YouTube or on the podcast platforms, to follow us on Instagram, to engage with our website. And one big reason for establishing Conduit Carolinas was we wanted an organization that purely exists to serve the Carolinas, whether it be in times of tragedy such as natural disasters such as Hurricane Helene, or in other ways to be that connector between other nonprofits that are serving great missions. How can we help? How can we be that connection? So we are established now. That's where I've been. We're kicking off the year really strong with Conduit Carolinas and other great opportunities that I'm going to be sharing with you soon. But if you want to get involved, you want to learn more about Conduit, whether you're here or abroad, you're one of my connections from elsewhere, then please, I'd invite you to get involved. We also saw great impact from all over the country. We had, because of again, my network being back west and our combined network being outside of North Carolina, people that wanted to get involved from where they were. So we had set up an Amazon registry link very early on and ended up receiving thousands of purchases of supplies that we specifically listed as needs. So people have been involved from all over the country, and we're so grateful for that. This is going to be a significant part of my focus going into 2025, which is my word for the year. I'll share more about that in the next episode. And I just invite you to be a part of Conduit. Not only that, but to be a conduit, to be someone that connects those that need help to those that want to offer and give help. So if you want to get involved, you have your own ways of getting involved. If you're local, we're always looking for volunteers to help hands-on with disaster relief. And if you're abroad, then giving in your own way, whether it be financial, your own resources, or your connections, then I invite you to be a part of it and to be a conduit with us. So we'll be getting back on our regular podcast schedule with weekly releases, and I'll look forward to continuing to make the ordinary extraordinary with you in 2025. Thank you.